Since humanity first started walking the earth, we've had dominion over every living thing. But humanity has exploited creation in the name of the almighty dollar. Until today, around 1/3 of known life on Earth faces extinction. But there are those who are acting to save endangered species before it's too late.
Amazonia, Brazil. Billions of acres of primary forest. It's estimated 20 million species of plants and animals live there. The identity of many of these species is still unknown to humanity. And even before they become known and named, they are critically endangered, heading for extinction. The Amazon is a perfectly closed environment. An ecosystem where the nutrients that sustain life are continually being recycled through the plants and animals that live there. The constant climate allows organisms to survive in very special niches, creating uniquely independent ecosystems. This means that many species only occur and survive in a single location. These species rely on other species for their existence, with others equally reliant upon them. And if one is lost, its effect on the ecosystem could be catastrophic for the remaining species. And too many are disappearing too fast. Over recent years, billions of hectares of pristine rainforest have been destroyed. Jungle, which has supported millions of unique ecosystems, have disappeared, and hundreds of species of plants and animals along with it. Today, in the time it takes to watch this documentary, 55 square miles of rainforest will have been destroyed. Every minute, 240 hectares of ancient old-growth trees, the world's air conditioning, crash to the ground. Some of it due to corrupt landowners exploiting a system that pays compensation for so-called improved land, which is then dispersed by the government to Brazil's landless. 4 hectares of Amazon rainforest disappear every second of every day, much to uncontrolled slash-and-burn agriculture. And these are the victims, or at least some of them. The pied barefaced tamarin, the woolly monkey, the red-backed squirrel monkey, the spider monkey, the Midas tamarin, the red ukari, and many, many more. As a group of species, these mini monkeys of Brazil are some of the most endangered on the face of the planet.
It's very bad. We are in a very bad situation now in Brazil.
To tell an Amazonian man to not cut a tree is just telling an Eskimo not to touch the snow.
The forest for the Brazilian people is nothing.
The government agency responsible for endangered species and for parks and reserves right now is basically being cut in half. The staff is being fired.
The babies are really beautiful, and their eyes, and sometimes you can see that they are screaming for help. And
These are just some of the people who are involved in jungle warfare in Brazil. The enemy is ignorance, greed, and corruption. A war whose casualties, amongst others, are these defenseless tiny primates. The golden lion tamarins. These creatures, along with so much of Brazil's wildlife, are on the red list of species that are teetering on the edge of extinction. In fact, in the 1970s, these creatures were so endangered, primatologists predicted they would be totally extinct by the year 2000. Thankfully, due to a massive international effort, they are not, but only just. Denise Ramboli is a general in the battle to save them from extinction.
well, I'm working with the Golden Lion Tamarin program about 10 years.
She and her team work at Poco de Antas in one of the remaining fragments of Brazil's Atlantic rainforest. When you talk of Brazil, most people think of the Amazon, never realizing there is, or rather was, another forest just as big and just as biologically diverse. Once upon a time in the south of Brazil, not so many years ago, there was a forest that stretched for more than 1,000 miles along the Atlantic coast. It was huge and teeming with life, but today it's gone. Like the Amazon, it too had a richness of life that would have equalled any other place on Earth. It would have had millions of species of animals and plants, many which aren't around today. But this is no fairy tale, rather a horror story, as today there is less than 2% of this magnificent forest remaining. And what makes this catastrophe worse is that the remaining forest is fragmented. 10 or 12 hectares here, 100 or so there, maybe 5,000 over the hill. Nothing that can guarantee these tiny monkeys any future, at least not without our help, and even then it's doubtful.
Well, so far we have around 800 tamarins in this region, but they are not a unique population. They are divided in 3 small subpopulations.
In an ideal world, these 3 populations would be able to socialize together, to come together, to mate, thereby ensuring the continued existence of the species, at the same time widening and strengthening the species gene bank, which is essential for any species to survive. But they can't come together because they are trapped. Their home ranges are miles apart. They live in forest islands, separated by a green ocean of pasture. Crisscrossed by fences, roads, and interstate highways. Which means there is no way they can reach one another to propagate.
There is still a risk of extinction for this species because we are enlarging the population, but the rhythm of enlarging the population is faster than enlarged forest.
Denise says it's a race against time, but they are making progress as they have convinced a number of landowners around the reserves to donate land to help the fight to rebuild the forest and the struggling golden lion tamarin population. But she says although there are many landowners willing to help, there simply isn't enough forest left, and the golden lion tamarin's final hour is drawing near. As if the lack of trees isn't bad enough, the lack of trees isn't the only problem. The golden lion tamarin hangs out in groups of up to 10 or 11. A single group needs around 5 hectares of land. Therefore, these forest fragments soon become overcrowded. Golden lion tamarins like to eat fruit, leaves and insects, though sometimes they bite back. At night they like to sleep in hollows. They don't have nests as such, but will hop from tree to tree, checking out possible group retreats until they find one that they're happy with. These gentle creatures generally grow to around 30 centimetres tall and weigh less than a video cassette. These are fragile creatures and occupy the dubious honour of being on the IUCN's red list of critically endangered species. They are truly battling for survival. These golden lion tamarins are not wild, or at least they were not born in the wild. In fact, they weren't even born in Brazil. They are legal aliens from the United States of America. They were born in captivity at the National Zoo in Washington, D.C., which is run by the Smithsonian Institute. That is where Andrea Martins and other Brazilian field workers come in. Like Denise Rambaldi, they are in the front line in the fight to save these creatures.
The biggest problem is areas. We don't have much forest for the monkeys because people still cutting their land.
It was the Smithsonian Institute which helped fund these radio tracking collars. They help Andrea track them and to ensure that these little guys assimilate into the forest, that they blend into their surroundings naturally. And she's just the person for the job.
Yes, I spent 2 months at National Zoo in Washington working with a couple of golden lion tamarinds and train them before I come to the forest. And I just went there to see how the work was and help people there.
And in Washington, visitors to the zoo can see part of that training, that preparation for release back into the wild that Andrea was talking about. They can see golden lion tamarins running free. These animals are part of a captive breeding program supported by the Smithsonian Institute.
The National Zoo basically coordinates the international program involving both the zoos and the field work that's been done and research and conservation activities.
Dr. Delva Kleiman and the National Zoo have been working with the golden lion tamarin since 1972. Then, as far as the researchers were concerned, these beautiful creatures were going to become extinct. Studies showed that there simply wasn't enough of their habitat, the Atlantic rainforest, left to sustain a viable population. At that time, there were just 72 golden lion tamarins in captivity, and less than 200 in the wild. Today, there are around 500 of these little monkeys in zoos around the world, waiting to be sent to Brazil to be put back where they belong.
We've been working very closely with private landowners and actually getting private landowners involved and committed to saving the forest by having tamarins on their land, because the Atlantic forest is one of the most rich areas of the world in biodiversity. It's a hotspot on every national conservation or international conservation organization's map.
And while these forest fragments are hotspots on conservation organisations' maps, there simply isn't enough of them. There isn't enough forest to sustain this amazing richness, and certainly not enough to enable these little animals to go back where they belong. But they have a plan to rebuild the golden lion tamarin population, a plan to rebuild the Atlantic rainforest. But their plan has a time limit.
We have a very clear goal until the year 2025. Until this year, we have to have about 2,000 tamarins living in the forest in Brazil. And to get this, we have to get around 25,000 hectares of protected area.
Yes. We have all given ourselves till 2025 to get a population in the wild that would approach a couple of thousand animals and 20,000 hectares of land. Now, even by 2025, even if we get the amount of protected habitat that we want, that we think we need, it's still going to be fragmented, because there may be 20 kilometers between one big patch of forest and 30 kilometers till you get to another one. And even if we get to 2025 with enough tamarins and enough habitat, we're still going to have to manage the tamarins.
Yes, we are trying to convince the government to do this, to raise corridors between these patches of forest.
This is not an impossible task, because if we can get the private landowners to agree to let us put in corridors of tropical forest trees, and in some cases they may be trees that can be of economic benefit to the rancher or farmer. If they can do that, then we can connect all these fragmented little bits of forest that currently exist.
But it all has to be done by the year 2025 to save this species from extinction. to make this species viable. They have to treat the fragmented golden lion tamarin's population in Brazil and the global golden lion tamarin population in the zoos as one clan or one tribe. This means ensuring that the widest breeding opportunities present themselves. At the same time, ensuring that related animals, brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles, don't breed with one another, for that would spell disaster.
We're going to have to be doing what's called metapopulation management, moving individual animals with particular genetic backgrounds from one patch of forest to another.
And from one zoo to another.
Even if we have enough habitat and a large enough population size of gold lion tamarins by 2025, we're still going to have to manage them because we're going to have little genetically isolated populations, and it's going to mean moving individual animals every generation or so from one population to the other. So in the foreseeable future, probably for the next minimum 50 years, until we can develop corridors between these forest patches so that the animals can move naturally between them, we're going to have to manage these wild animals, and it's almost like managing them in a zoo.
But if they can't reach that goal by the year 2025?
If in the year 2025 we didn't get this, we're gonna give up, because nothing more can be done to save this species. It is a clear objective, and we are doing progress every year, and let's see.
It's a radical plan, and one they say that has never been used before in the fight to save endangered species. And with the help of the Smithsonian Institute, the National Zoo and other zoos around the world, their plan may just work. It has to if these Mico Leon Dourado, as they're called locally, are to survive. And while the golden lion tamarins that are supported by the National Zoo in Washington have the big bucks of the Smithsonian Institute to help them, in Brazil, the Rio de Janeiro Primate Center is not so lucky. This is Brazil's Center for Primatology. It was started more than 30 years ago by Eldemar Colombra Filho, who retired in the early 1990s. Today, it's run by Alcides Piscianati. When the Primate Centre was started, this hillside was barren. But thanks to the centre's tireless hard work, it has been regrown. Not to its former glory, but pretty close to it. Inside this fragment of regrowth Atlantic rainforest are many species of plants and animals fighting their way back from the brink. And inside these cages is the main focus of the centre, saving the mini monkeys of Brazil.
Well, the current state of the tamarin population now is better than we start to work with the primates 25 years ago.
This forest he has regrown forms part of the water catchment area for Rio de Janeiro.
Well, the big problem for this species is habitat. Okay, we have been having some success in captive, but we have problem how or where we can put these animals that we breed in captivity, because no forest. They need forest.
And it's the same for all these species. The main reason they are on the brink of extinction is because of the lack of habitat. There is nowhere for them to live. Humanity has destroyed it. Throughout southern Brazil, the rainforest has gone, and there's nowhere to put them. So as the animals are bred up, they have to be kept in cages or shipped to zoos overseas. You see, Dr. Piscianati cannot stop breeding them. He mustn't stop breeding them, because, as we have already said, their gene pool is so small they have to be bred to keep the gene pool as wide as possible, and also to guard against some catastrophic disaster that may wipe out the remaining animals in the wild, like fire or disease. And with that in mind, many of these animals are sent to zoos around the world for safekeeping. And while some of Dr. Piscianati's animals are sent to zoos, others have been released back into the wild. He has supplied them to Denise Rambaldi's Poca de Antis project, but not anymore, because currently there's no more room left in her forest fragments. She has taken as many as the forest fragments can bear. But anyway, she only works with golden lion tamarins. There are plenty of other mini monkeys whose future is just as doubtful. There are the various barefaced tamarins from the Amazon, like the pied barefaced tamarin. This species has a tiny geological range and is being pushed out by the ever-growing human population. The golden-rumped lion tamarin. This species was the victim of the pet trade. At one stage it was thought 50% of the world's population had been smuggled out of Brazil to pet shops around the world. The black lion tamarin, which was thought to be extinct until it was rediscovered in 1970. Today, there's probably less than 1,000 in the wild. All of these primates are on the red list of critically endangered animals, just like the golden lion tamarin, all of whom face extinction.
My staff is very small, and we work with a very huge difficulties, but well, we look for the animals, for the nutrition, for management, for reproduction, pathology, and this point of view to the animals. And we look for the habitat. We work in habitat restoration, replanting many different plants here and put some different animals here, birds or lizards, okay? And not only primates, because we want to maintain the biodiversity of this region.
Dr. Piscianati has more than 24 species of mini monkeys here, in total about 220 animals. With this kind of responsibility, you'd think that Dr. Piscianati and his centre would be at the front of the funding queue. Well, he's not. In fact, this man who is charged with so much responsibility, and despite the fact he's head of Brazil's primary primate centre, he survives with hand-to-mouth funding. And what makes matters worse is that the government support for his work stops with his wages. There's no financial support for the centre, no money to build enclosures, no money for medicines for the animal, and not even money to feed them. All these costs are borne by Piscianati himself. Medicines and food that aren't donated are paid for out of his own pocket. But he doesn't complain about that.
I feel my heart very comfortable working here with the animals or plants. I am a man with great privileges. Yeah, I have this great privileges working in this land like this, not in cities. God is gave me good condition. Thank you.
What he does complain about is the corruption that hampers his work.
It's very bad. We are in a very bad situation now in Brazil. I don't know how we can do to change the mind of politicals.
Dr. Piscianati says that up until now he has had enormous pressure on him not to talk of the problems he faces in working with endangered species. But he says he can no longer remain silent.
We cannot make some critics about political or not. We and because these people says don't show bad situation, don't show this, only the good things or good results. You can't show this, or can't discuss about the difficulties. If you do, you are fired, you got a lot of problems. It's terrible, it's terrible.
So by telling us these things, Dr. Piscianati is putting his job on the line, if not more.
In my opinion, I think that we have to say the truth. This is right, this is not right.
He says that some people have got money to spend on projects, but that this money has not been spent correctly. He says an international inquiry must look at how aid is spent in this country. He says particularly aid meant for endangered species.
We need to show the real truth about our institution, about the situation, because I am thinking in the animals. The animals is important, not my person. Okay.
Nevertheless, Dr. Piscianati fears he will pay dearly for what he has told us, but continues to do the best he can with the little he has. Although most of his work is with the smallest of Brazil's mini monkeys, Piscianati's favourite is the moroqui, the woolly spider monkey.
Maybe because it's big primates, or maybe because they have some behavior, very special behavior.
The moroqui is another endangered monkey. There are only around 1,000 of these, the biggest of the neotropic monkeys, left in the wild. Like its smaller cousins, the tamarins, its habitat is severely degraded, with only 25 small pockets of suitable rainforest remaining. One such pocket is several hundred miles north of the primate centre, near a town called Caratinga.
Yes, the moroqui is endangered. In Brazil, there is a very few number of the individuals of moroqui.
Eduardo Vido is the keeper of Brazil's largest population of woolly spider monkeys. The population, a mere 150 animals. The woolly spider monkey is one of those animals that enjoys the company of others of its species. In times gone by, they could be seen in troops of up to 50 or more, but not today. Their habitat can't support such large numbers. As with the tamarins, the problem is habitat destruction. As with the tamarins, just 2% of their habitat is remaining. As with the tamarins, they are on the edge of extinction. 2% of its original habitat isn't much when you consider these animals are the most specialised of all the New World leaf-eating monkeys. Like all of Brazil's monkeys, their enemy is big business, ignorance, greed, and, as Dr. Piscianati has said, corruption. But unlike Dr. Piscianati, who works in a government institute, Eduardo's reserve is an NGO, a non-government organisation, on private land. And as with the Golden Lion Tamarin project, Eduardo has a plan.
Well, this is a place that we trying to increase the research for the monkeys on the forest. We planted trees that the monkeys eat, and plant this into the forest again. They are lovely, I think so, right? They are the biggest one, and they are I know them since '83. I know and I love them. I think they are very especially monkeys, and I think they need help, and I want to help them, right?
Despite his work, despite his huge battle against the odds and his hopes of saving the species, Eduardo knows he is fighting a losing battle.
I feel very sad because my sons will not know the richness of this place, because the man broken everything and burns everything, and we'll start to be without this richness, right? This is the feeling I feel.
And it seems history is about to repeat itself in Brazil. Despite the fact humanity has all but destroyed the Atlantic forest, despite the fact hundreds of species of plants and animals have become extinct, despite the people who are battling to save the remaining forest fragments and the species that are hanging on there, the same mistakes that destroyed the Atlantic forest are happening again. This time in the Amazon. This is Manaus. 2 hours' flight from its nearest major city, it sits on the banks of the Amazon River. It is the home to 1.5 million people. At one time, it was called the Paris of South America. It even had an opera house. These buildings were prefabricated in Europe and shipped out. This is where rubber was discovered. There was a time when businessmen who lived and worked here would send their laundry back to London to be done. Extravagance in the extreme. Those extravagant days are gone now, or at least for most. Today, Manaus is a busy metropolis that's like any other big city in the world. Noisy, busy, and pushing out pollution. And here, despite the fact it's surrounded by millions of square miles of rainforest, plants and animals are on the edge of extinction. This tiny, pied, bare-faced tamarin is a typical example of what is happening to species on the fringes of the Amazon. Its habitat is all but destroyed, and he is becoming displaced, a refugee. Like so many species, this mini monkey's home range is tiny, maybe as small as a football field, and it's being forced into the home range of other tamarins, like these silvery tamarins, who are very protective of their territory. The pied barefaced tamarin's home range used to be where Manaus is today. But Manaus is not the worst-case scenario. Around the fringes of the Amazon, huge fires are burning as the landless people and others burn the forest to grow pasture. And in the east, huge tracts of land are being laid to waste by logging companies who are destroying the forest at an alarming rate. much of which is illegal. Corrupt officials turn blind eyes as Indonesian logging companies and others take what they cannot replace. But while in the south of the country, people like Denise Rambaldi, Alcides Piscionati and Eduardo Vido are fighting the odds to save the Atlantic rainforest species, here too in the Amazon, people are seeing the warning signs and are acting hopefully before it's too late.
It's possible that the species are going to be extinct before they are discovered.
Betty Roosmal and her husband house the spider monkeys, a cousin of the woolly spider monkey that lives down south. These red-faced spider monkeys live in a cage in her backyard. These are being rehabilitated and will eventually be released back into the Amazon. She says people are becoming aware of the plight of the animals, and often people will knock on her door and leave them with a sick or injured animal. It was one such encounter, in fact, that led to the discovery of a new species of spider monkey. One of those species that is found to be endangered even before it's named.
Yeah, I think there are many other species to discover. And not only monkeys, because when we did research about plants in Suriname, we also discovered new plants.
This white-capped spider monkey, who has taken a serious liking to her German shepherd, was brought in because it was sick. Her husband, who is a primatologist, immediately recognized it as a new species and took it in. This is not the first new species he has discovered. On an expedition into the interior in 1998, he found this tiny family of mini monkeys. Again, like the white-capped spider monkey, it was named and declared endangered. There are many people working in the Amazon who recognize that unless the tide of destruction is stemmed, the Amazon will go the same way as the Atlantic rainforest. One of those people is Davy Israel. He and his family run another private sanctuary or rehabilitation centre for injured and confiscated animals.
There was an idea 10 years ago when we saw that there was a problem with the animals that were confiscated from the government agency responsible for that area. What they usually do is they gut the animals and just put them back in the forest. These animals were stressed, weak, and didn't know the way in the new forest.
Eco Park is a sanctuary that is adjacent to Davy's Bush Hotel. It has many species which are endangered.
So we start to discuss with scientists and biologists and veterinarians what we could do. And that's how the idea came about, to create an area where the animals could go for a period of time before they were released back in the forest.
And since that time, the area has grown. And to make sure the animals are in good health and are making progress, he employs a biologist who comes in twice a week to check everything is working as it should. Rosanna Subira says it is difficult to rehabilitate the animals because when they are infants, it's difficult for them to climb up the trees to feed. She says there are so few places in Manaus like the Eco Lodge where animals and birds can be rehabilitated. Here they are free. They can go to the forest or come back to feed. She says they have the freedom to come and go as they like. There's no doubt that part of the driving force behind this rehabilitation centre is that it gives the tourists who visit Davy's Eco Lodge a special treat, to see the monkeys like these woolly monkeys in the wild. But like so many others in the world that are struggling to save endangered species, ecotourism is the way of the future if humanity and wildlife are to live in some kind of harmony.
So we created in this area a jungle lodge. We have 60 apartments, 20 bungalows spread in the jungle, and we bring groups from all over the world, and these groups pay, of course, a fee to stay overnight. And part of this fee, a large part, is given to the foundation to develop its research projects and educational projects, not only in this area, but also in Manaus and other parts of the state of the Amazon.
Visitors to this area see more than just the Eco Lodge. They see where the two rivers, the Black and the White rivers, combine to form the Amazon. So if the Amazon is to survive, an alternative to logging and slash-and-burn agriculture must be found. And like Davy, other people believe that ecotourism is part of the answer. The condition of the Amazon forest is healthy at the moment. Despite the fact that some 55 square miles of forest have been destroyed while you've been watching this program, most of the Amazon is still in pristine condition. The challenge is to keep it that way, and that is in everyone's interest. The Amazon has been described as the Earth's lungs, or its air conditioning. Without the world's forests, humanity will have a hard time surviving. Once the forests are gone, there is no replacing them, and the Amazon is the largest of the world's remaining forests. If we destroy the forests, no matter how much we replant, or how many reforestation programs are in place, no matter how much mining or logging companies rehabilitate the land that they have degraded, it can never be restored to its former glory. It's impossible to return the forest to its pristine condition, which took millions of years to create. People talk about saving the forests and the creatures in it for future generations. But the problem is actually much more acute than that. We simply don't have that much time left. What we should be doing is saving the forest and the creatures for today's generation, for the tiny tots who are running around today. If we don't stop the destruction now, if we allow the Amazon jungle to go the same way as the Atlantic rainforest, then by the time today's little children have grown up, there simply won't be any of these wonderful mini monkeys of Brazil left. The situation is so acute, these animals won't be around for the current generation to enjoy, let alone the next and future generations. These creatures will have gone forever. And how can we, in all honesty, allow that to happen?